everybody, this is Emily, and this is the presentation that I put together with Rebecca on teacher tenure. So some of our guiding questions were how teacher tenure just came to be, the standard for teachers, and do teachers who have tenure lose their zest for teaching, their enthusiasm, all those things that they come into the job with? Does teacher tenure make it more difficult to remove those so-called bad teachers, and what is the process that they have to go through? We'll also talk a little bit about an interview with a teacher and how she feels about having tenure. Then how does a teacher become tenured, and how many teachers get dismissed from their tenured status every year? So, how did it all get started? Well, in the 19th century, there were many teachers who had no job protection, and they could be fired for anything. Women could be fired for becoming pregnant. I know during our debate, someone mentioned that women could get fired if they wore pants, and so there was a lot of uncertainty on a day-to-day basis for teachers, and they just were really unsure about their jobs when they came to school every day and came to work. So, in 1886, Massachusetts was actually the first state to pass a tenure law, and then by the 1950s, almost 80% of all teachers were finally tenured. So, a little trivia question. There was a historical event that happened which caused most of these teacher unions to form and teachers to kind of come together and realize they needed some job security and some support for their job. So what do you think that historical event was that happened which caused the unions to form and then tenure to be put in place by the 1950s? So was it A, the Gold Rush, B, the Great Depression, or C, the Korean War? If you said the Gold Rush, you're incorrect. If you said the Great Depression, you're right. So the Great Depression came and people were really just going through a lot financially, insecure of what was happening. So because of the Great Depression, that is when unions formed and teachers bonded together to just really unify and make sure that they had that tenure. So what do you think the average number of years most teachers need to work before they receive tenure? So just think about it for a minute, and what is your guess on how many years? The answer is actually 3 years. So in this bar graph, you can see that it actually is interesting because it shows that there's a change in the trend of years it takes to get tenure. So the blue bar shows in 2010 how many states had a tenure and how long it took to get tenure. And then in 2014, the red bar, it shows a change in that. So you can see that 2 years was kind of a lot of, about 6 states had that in 2010. And now it's only 4 states. And then as the years go over, 5 or more went up quite a bit. And there's actually quite a few, 3 states that are only annual contracts. They don't have tenure. So, not sure if you know where California stands, but California is actually one of only 3 states that has a 2-year tenure. And then a majority of states, 31 states, actually it takes 3 years before you can get tenure. So kind of interesting. I kind of always thought 2 years was the standard, but then when I saw this map, I realized, oh, it actually takes a lot longer in different states. And then just a little comic for getting ready for the holidays. Does tenure cause teachers to become complacent? Do they see that tenure as a paper that says, I don't have to be good or bad because I have tenure? So in doing my research, I found that there was no real evidence that tenure caused teachers to become complacent. A lot of what was shown in the studies was that a lot of the research is done on simulations, and it might be happening in class, it might not be happening. Or these two researchers specifically said, every teacher is different, different personalities, different times in their teaching career. The kids they're teaching are different, so it's really hard to do research on a subject like tenure because you can't really blanket all teachers under one umbrella when they're all very different. But what tenure does do is that it actually encourages teachers to try new things, take risks. They're not afraid that if they have one bad observation, they're going to get fired. It also allows teachers to be on equal footing and the same playing field. We're all kind of in the same boat. All right, so how hard is it to say you're fired? So tenure is actually due process. So it doesn't prevent bad teachers from getting fired. It just makes sure there's a process to follow, and you can't just have an administrator who decides, I want to fire you just because. The problem is the process of firing a teacher is pretty expensive, and there's a very long process that has to be followed in order to fire a tenured teacher. There was a newsletter that I saw, and it actually said the cost of firing a tenured teacher can take 2 to 3 years, and it can cost millions of dollars. And between 1996 and 2005, only 100 dismissal hearings in the entire state of California were presented. So, as an administrator, if it's going to cost millions of dollars and take 2 to 3 years, I can see why a lot of administrators, try to either move a poor teacher to a different grade or put them somewhere else instead of going through this whole long process. So how do teachers feel about tenure? I interviewed a kindergarten teacher at my school who's been there for quite some time, and she just said that she believes tenure is a good thing because she's been teaching a while and she feels secure in her job. She doesn't feel like these new young teachers are going to come in and they're bigger and better and greater, and she doesn't have a classroom that's full of these TPT things and Pinterest ideas, but she still does an amazing job. And she is secure in knowing she's not going to get fired because she doesn't have something someone else has. But what she did bring up, which I thought was interesting, was that she believes that teachers should have more of a role in peer evaluations. So when you're trying to gain that tenure, do different things, the administrators are really the one that are doing the observations. But really, how often are they in your classroom? For, not that long, a few minutes, a couple times a year. Her idea is that maybe the coworkers should give some sort of evaluation. It could be anonymous or something, but we really work with teachers more often, and we kind of see a different side of them, and so it might be helpful if administration kind of asks an opinion from the teacher, because that might help to not just grant tenure to every single teacher that comes in.
Hello, this is now Rebecca Carricker, and I'm going to continue the presentation. So Emily had just talked about the interview that she had with one of her coworkers, and I found this picture online, and I thought it was very interesting. So as you look at this picture, just think of some thoughts and how this picture could relate back to a teacher being tenured. So when I look at this picture, I feel the umbrella is the tenure, and all the people underneath are teachers, and the umbrella is protecting them, just like tenure protects teachers in their position. So teachers feel very secure, and that's what this picture makes me feel. My next slide, how does a teacher become tenured? Every state has their own way of determining if a K through 12 teacher is ready to become tenured. Teachers in most states have to go through a probationary period. Usually this is 3 years. During this time, a teacher's contract might not be renewed, or it could be renewed, and they're not too sure when they're in this period of time. Florida, North Carolina, Kansas, and Idaho have phased out or have removed the due process to becoming tenured. So some of them hold yearly contracts that are kind of like tenured, but they do not have the same process as other states. In the resource that I looked at, Christie and Zenith point out that Idaho's new law states that no new employment contract between a school district and certificated employee shall result in the vesting of a tenure. So I thought that was a little interesting. The ways tenure can be granted. So while teachers are in this probationary period, many states look at the teacher's impact on student outcomes, while other states choose not to address performance evaluation at all. Some states actually mandate evaluation criteria in great detail. They make their evaluations an integral part of becoming tenured. Since tenure is a product of legislation, there is not a legal obstacle that prevents each state from strengthening or weakening the evaluation component of the tenure status. So at any point, if a state would like to change their tenure status or how to get tenure, maybe strengthen it or weaken it, they're allowed to. Every state has their own different process for this. So the Education Commission of the states wrote that in 2011, 18 state legislators had modified their tenure or continuing contract policies. So in 2011, 18 different states actually went back, modified their tenure. They either strengthened it or weakened it for teachers to be granted this 10-year status. So this is just a little trivia question. How many teachers are tenured in the United States currently? And if you just want to answer in your mind real quick, A is 1.5 million, B 2.3 million, C 3.4 million. The correct answer is 2.3 million teachers are actually tenured right now in the United States. So the next question is, how many teachers get dismissed from their tenure status a year? So just looking at California, in 2014 there were 275,000 teachers in California. Out of those teachers, 91 of the teachers within the past 10 years lost their teaching job. So they just lost their job at the school that they were working at. They were able to get another job with another school district or maybe another position. But out of those 91 teachers, 19 of them were dismissed from their tenure status. So they lost their job, and the school district went through the whole entire process to get their tenure status dismissed. So that is an average of 2 teachers a year within those 10 years. So I found this really interesting. This was just California. A lot of states are different. And this slide is just a picture of the pros and cons of tenure. So tenure protects teachers from being fired for non-work related reasons. Tenure prevents schools from firing experienced, more costly teachers in order to hire less experienced teacher for less money. Tenure protects educators who teach controversial or unpopular subjects. It ensures academic freedom, and tenure encourages schools to hire teachers who are qualified and effective. And on the con side, some say tenured teachers may become complacent because they're unlikely to be fired. Underperforming tenured teachers are difficult to dismiss. It can take months as the principal, school board, unions, and courts get involved. Tenure impacts dismissals by forcing schools to fire recently hired teachers rather than the older underperforming ones. And at the K through 12 level, tenure is not earned but given to nearly all teachers. And the last slide is our references. So these were the 5 that me and Emily used for our research. So I just want to thank you guys for watching.